What is mental health? How do we explain mental health? Does mental health mean what it did a generation ago, or has the definition for mental health changed? Loads of questions. To answer these questions and more, mental hygienist Richard Tyler is joining me for Mental Health Explained. Health explorer Neil Fellows here to get healthy and fit and stay healthy and fit and do it in a way that's natural and unique to you. Please subscribe and hit the bell. You may have grown up being called names in the playground, or maybe labelled a problem for your behaviour. You may have suppressed your natural instincts to be true to yourself because of some foreseen guilt or shame or other emotion, or family values, or religious pressures, or a peer group. You may have seen TV programmes where people became a danger to the public and got locked up and put into mental health institutions. And maybe you're worried if you let out who was really inside you, that you may end up in one of those places too. We all go through troubles in our lives. Some of us go through more than others. But it's more important than ever, with all of the pressures that are on us these days, that we're able to notice that we're struggling and be able to ask for help. Richard Tyler is an expert in the field of mental health. So let me bring him in so that he can help us with Mental Health Explained. So Richard, what would be a really good definition for 21st century mental health?
It's a great question, and I'm pretty sure lots of people will have their own definitions of what it is. And for me, it's about pulling together a few threads, and my capturing of it is about the quality and the essence of our emotional, psychological, and our social well-being. So our emotional and psychological is about our internal world, so that's about our ability to be in relationship with ourselves. So how good are we? What is the quality and what's the feeling like of our ability to connect and be in relationship with ourselves whilst being in relationship with the world around us, and that might be family dynamics, and that might be friendships, it might be working groups. But how do we manage that, the pull of what is outside of us, but whilst also staying true and connected to ourselves? And you know, we all have health. We have our physical health and we have our mental health, and we know much more with our physical health, but that moves up and down on a continuum. Some days it can be better than others. Some days our body may ache a bit more, we may have a headache, we may feel a bit tired and sluggish, and perhaps we have some things that we do about it, and we get back to a point of equilibrium and balance. And the same is true with our mental health. We all have mental health, and it moves up and down on a scale of days where it can feel good and effective and light and easy, and it isn't in our own way, and it doesn't dominate our choices. It feels as though it's quite smooth and we're in flow. There will be days where shit happens around us, inside of us, our reaction and our response to it, where actually it means that the quality of our mental well-being, so our emotions, our psychology, and our ability to relate and connect with the world around us is diminished in some way. So it's forever shifting, and I think we're understanding much more about mental health now than we have ever done, and yet, and I was talking about it on a call yesterday, that there were days where people had moments of psychosis and quite what were deemed to be quite serious mental health issues and breakdowns, and they were locked in asylums, and they were locked in hospitals, and they were chained to beds, and they were given drugs that would quieten them, calm them, soothe them, put them in a sleep-like state for the rest of their life. That still happens today. It does still happen, and it doesn't happen in quite the way that it used to, but it does still happen, where we see those episodes of poor mental health as significant and serious, and therefore it needs to be just calmed and the edges taken off of it. And if you look at some of Stan Grof's work, where he writes and talks all about spiritual emergence and spiritual emergency, actually many of those cases from years gone by were people having some kind of spiritual emergency where the world, where their soul, where their true self with a capital S was knocking at their door for attention. And it will do anything to get our attention. It will manifest physically or manifest emotionally or psychologically. And why, when we're in this massive mental health epidemic now, are there so many people whose doors are being knocked on quite loudly? So do we go, that's a mental health epidemic, or actually are we in this space of a huge waking up to the world, a huge realization that many of us are so disconnected from our true selves? The split off has become so significant, and therefore our ability to hold a quality of emotional wellness, psychological wellness, and then social wellness is significantly impacted.
Mm. You mentioned there kind of the way that patients were often treated in the past. So in my childhood, certainly I grew up not too far away from a mental institution. It was only about a mile and a half down the road, and we would hear these sirens go off during the day. Sometimes it would be at least weekly. I would have heard this going off, and I was only 8 when we moved away from that area, but I still remember it very, very clearly. And so when the siren went off, it was letting the local population know that someone had escaped from the mental institution. So I kind of grew up with these sort of thoughts that people with mental health issues, there was some kind of stigma around that. I was wondering, from your point of view, how could someone who maybe feels stigma around mental health, how could they start to reframe it? Because it's not an easy thing for people to talk about.
It isn't an easy thing at all. And I kind of, as I listen to you talk about that story, we go, that just creates so much fear, doesn't it? We have to sound an alarm bell because someone's escaped, and so then suddenly everyone that suffers from mental health is a danger to themselves or to others, or they're at risk, or they might attack you, or they might do things that aren't very nice to you. And of course, that's the truth. That is the truth on a sliding scale of where we get to cases that are very, very extreme. Crimes are committed as a result of someone's psychological state that they're in. But of course, the stigma remains. The stigma is still there. There is still a fear around it. And I think, when you ask the question about people who feel the stigma, and I guess we've got the people who are feeling it on the end of other people's stigma. So perhaps they are struggling with their own mental well-being, yet they also know around them is this story, is this view, is this, we're seeing at the moment with people that cough. Mia comes back from school and tells me that she's got a terrible cough at the moment, and she's coughing, and people like just kind of move away from her, and they don't want to be near her because they don't want to get COVID. But we've got the same thing where people will talk about mental health issues, and that there's a fear, and that we must keep a distance. And there is massive fear of mental illness. And when I start to unravel for a lot of people what that's about, it tends to come back to an uncertainty around whether they will be able to cope. So if someone tells them that they are struggling with their own mental well-being, will that individual be able to cope? Will they make it worse if they intervene, if they have a conversation about it? Is it easier to ignore it or to turn and face it? Is it easier if we turn a blind eye and we just pretend that it doesn't exist and we go on as normal and hope that it will kind of just kind of float off into thin air? And we're a long way off being able to collapse it. And whilst wherever we look around us at the moment, there are a ton of campaigns to raise awareness so people start to get insight. We're still a long way off. We're still a long way off changing this. And I'm not sure that if we know that our mental health is on a sliding scale where perhaps it is not at our optimum and not where we'd like it to be, it's not the ideal time to be educating others around mental health and mental illness and getting people to view it differently when our own health is compromised. And I think the easiest way for us to be able to view it if we are struggling ourselves is to have at least one person in our life where we can speak our truth, where we can give voice to how we are struggling and what we are struggling with. And that might be someone on the end of a helpline, and it might be a therapist, and it might be a best friend that we have. But we need at least one person where we can be seen, where we can be heard, where we can sit in our pain and our difficulty and our darkness without judgment. We don't need a massive tribe of people. We don't need everyone around us to get it, because as I've already said, people will be responding in their own ways with their own stories and their own reactions. But we do need at least one person so that we can find our way to move through it. And when we're able to move through it, then there is the opportunity to help educate and teach others those that hold the stigma.
Yeah. When does a deeply troubling life situation develop into a mental health problem?
It's as I said, it's on this forever moving scale. It goes up and down the continuum. Stuff happens around us. We have life conditions will inform our responses and our reactions and our choices, and that might be what we're seeing going on around the globe at the moment. It might be that we lose someone close to us, we lose a job, we're made redundant. So it's forever moving, and it can move from one second to the next. My sense of when it becomes where we go, actually it's something now that is beyond just a day-to-day manageable thing of I have a bit of anxiety and I kind of balance it out a bit, or I feel a bit low mood, but then I manage to pick up and it's okay for a chunk of time. I think there are a few defining factors, one of which is when our mental well-being, when our low mental well-being, when the quality of it is reduced, when that part of us that is struggling is running the show. So when that part of us is choosing for us and we feel as though ourselves, our self, our personality is then has stopped making choices, has stopped being the one that decides and encourages the rest of the team to follow in the decision. It means that this one part of us that in some way is compromised or struggling or stuck is making all the decisions for us. And a part of that is through our ability to self-regulate. Most of the time, for most of us, we're able to self-regulate. We can balance it. We can deal with the stuff that happens in our outside world. We can figure it out. We can move through. We can either weep uncontrollably, or we will find a way to just move through it in whatever way is okay, and we come through the other side. It's problematic when we're not able to do that, when we're not able to move through it, and therefore we stop self-regulating. We stop finding our balance point. We stop getting back to that place of equilibrium where we feel safe, in flow, and in control. And this is the point really when the burden of our mental well-being becomes too much to bear, and it's costing us in other areas of our lives. So it's costing us in our relationships, or it's costing us in our job, or it's costing us in our friendships in some way. And we don't always notice that when we're in it. When it's our world and our lens, we don't see this. So we become very reliant on others perhaps to give us that insight. Because often if we start to get into this darker place, we stop seeing, it stops being visible to us. But there is a point just before that where there is the opportunity to spot and notice that our ability to regain control and get back into the driving seat, and to be able and to include what feels difficult and painful and troublesome, that's compromised, and that becomes less easy for us to grab hold of.
Fascinating as ever listening to you talking about this. If you are really enjoying what Richard's saying here in this video, please do give us a thumbs up, because it does the channel an enormous favour. Richard, next question for you. What can someone with a mental health diagnosis do to help other people around them understand what they're going through, and maybe communicate their needs and gain some support?
Okay, so this is a really interesting one for me, because again, I come back to this place of when we are in a place that we are when we're in a place of struggle and wrestle, and where it feels particularly difficult, is that the time to be wanting others to really understand about it? So when we are deeply activated, do we then want to be spending time, perhaps in some relationships, justifying to others why it's so difficult, when actually the energy that we have feels at such a premium for people, their good energy and their energy to be able to repair and heal suffering and kind of rebuild what feels quite ruptured, actually needs to be plowed internally, needs to be pushed towards ourselves. So I have this statement about don't learn karate whilst you're being mugged. So it's not the time in the moment of a mugging to go, I am going to learn a bit about karate. We have to find ways to better regulate our mental well-being now, especially when we might be in a phase of being quite well. Of course, it's the last thing we do, because you go, it's all right, I don't need to bother because it's not a problem. But the more we're able to understand our mental wellness and when it peaks and when it drops off and some of the things that contribute to that, the more opportunities we then have as to when we start to move into a difficult phase, we can catch it much sooner. But there is much help out there that comes often without the stigma and the need to educate others. So I'm part of quite a few men's groups online, and I see these kind of recurring stories of people going, I'm trying to get my wife to understand. I'm trying to get my family to understand. I've been trying to talk to my mum about it, but it's impossible. They just keep telling me it's okay and to not worry and to chin up. And that's quite a lot of the dialogue in the groups too. We've all been there, mate. You'll be okay. You'll get through. And that's if that's what we keep getting back when we know that we're in a time of struggle, that either encourages us to go, yeah, it's going to be all right, push on. It's back to this conversation we've had before about resilience, where we go, put your big boy pants on and just keep on going, because there'll be brighter days ahead. So in most cases, that isn't the best solution, because we exclude what is the problem. So there are plenty of places without stigma, without judgment, whether that's support lines, helplines, chat lines, where actually there's a freedom just to be able to have a conversation with someone who doesn't know us, who doesn't have any stake or particular interest in our lives, but has an interest in helping us in that moment and just being present for us and seeing us. My encouragement is steering people to go down that route and start to look outside first, to have a place where we can put it, where we won't get the judgment, we won't get someone going, here are a few things you could do to make it a bit better for you right now. Why didn't you go on holiday? Why didn't you stop? Actually, we don't want that. We just want someone who will be present with us and hear us and see us in our moment of difficulty and challenge. And I tend to think now the cleaner routes to go, when we start going people that are close to us, the likelihood is we're going to get the you'll be okay, we're going to get the solutions, and the solutions kick in too early.
So what I'm really hearing from you then is someone who has identified they have a mental health issue, challenge, problem, is to go and find someone who will listen to you without judgment, really see what it is you're going through, and just really listen. I guess that really is the first thing that anyone going through something really perhaps needs.
I don't think most of us, whilst for many of us, we can go, didn't have bad childhoods, we had good childhoods. And for many of us in our childhood, we were not seen in our wholeness. We were not a part of relationships where we were seen fully, all of us, our darkness and our shadow and our challenging parts and our lightness and our joy and our brightness. We weren't seen in its entirety. If you look at the supposed efficacy of therapy, there's tons of research that says less is about the modality or the intervention or the type of therapist we go to. What makes that relationship special and work is the quality of the relationship, the quality of someone being able to be with us and just be present and attentive to us in that moment and be relational with us and allow all of us to come in. Most of us don't have an experience of that in life. I as much as I endeavor to be the best parent I can be, do I do that all of the time, or do I embody all of that with me all of the time? Of course I don't, because I get caught in things and I get seduced by stuff, or I get irritated, or I get blinded by things. So actually that's what we're looking for almost in this first instance of where do we get that quality of someone that will be in relationship with us regardless of what we bring. And in many cases that isn't a friend or a partner or someone we work with, because there'll be some residue of other stuff in there. And I think if we're really wrestling with our own mental well-being and we don't know where to put it and we don't know where to take it, the place to take it first is to someone that will just remain in relationship with us regardless of what we bring.
And of course, we're really fortunate these days. I know when we were younger, the stigma around mental health still existed. But these days, it doesn't in the same way, and there are so many places people can go for help. You know, counsellors, hypnotherapists, EFT practitioners, psychotherapists, the doctors.
Yeah, we can, and almost those what you've just listed there almost become when we're at a point of intervention, when we're at a point of now, how do I do something with this? I think there's that real early door stage, which is we just notice that this has gone on a little bit too long. It's that bit of I'm struggling to self-regulate. I notice my emotion can dip really quickly, and then I find it difficult to get it back up again. That first point of actually, there's plenty of free helplines, of text lines, anonymous text lines, of video calling if you want video calling, but otherwise just you can almost be invisible yet be seen at the same time. There are plenty of those for us, 24 hours a day, aimed at children, aimed at men, aimed at women, aimed at the older population. There's loads, and I almost think that's the first place to go where there's a bit of scratching our head and uncertainty, and we don't know what to do next, just so that we can be listened to. And almost that second or third step then becomes about what do I need and want to do in order to start doing some work on this.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Richard. We always like to finish off with a challenge, so that we can think about what you've been talking about here and make it practical. What would you leave us with this time?
I think there is with our world that moves so fast, and for most of us, we're running to keep up with it or stay ahead of it. There's a part of this that is about, and I've touched on our ability to self-regulate, is do we understand where our baseline is? Do we understand, we can see when our bath water gets too full, when we fill the bath up, we got holes in the bath and it starts to drain the water away. But we wouldn't let the bath run right to the very top and then go, oh, it's getting a bit full. We'd want to do something sooner than that. And the challenge, I think, for people from today is to say, do you understand where your baseline point is, where you go, there's enough in there, it's full enough, and therefore I don't want to put any more in there. If it can take more, but I don't need to put more in. If I put more in, I push myself to my very edges. So where's my baseline for good emotional, psychological, and social functioning? Where's my point where I go, actually, I feel in control, I feel balanced, and I can't take any more of that. I can't take any more emotion today. Is going to tip me up a bit, and I start to go into that zone where I just sense it. I sense it in my body. I sense it in the temperature of my system. You know, we're so reliant on our head giving us our information. Actually, our ability to understand our baseline is about our physical intelligence, to even listen to our body. We can only listen to our body when we start to slow down, when we start to just move through our day, or even parts of our day, just with a little bit more ease and, I guess, gentleness with ourselves. And for many people, some people will be listening to this going, that's impossible. I can't do that. My life's crazy. You might not be able to do it with your entire day. And you can do it with a period of time. You can do it with 5 minutes after you get up, but you just move with a little bit more gentleness and slowness and consciousness about your decisions. But when we do that, we start to get information from our body. We get a sense check, even if it's as crude as a 0 to 10. 10 is my absolute, I've got a problem and this is kind of not going to go well. 8 is kind of maxing out. We want to know where's our 5, where's our 6, where's our 7, and we're just sensing that. We can't sense that if we get up and we run crazy fast. So I would say the challenge is slow down, and in your slowing down, start to sense where your own baseline is, in order that you can then start to regulate yourself.
Nice one. Thank you, Richard. Always fascinating talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to talk to you too.
Yeah, thank you. What really stood out for me was the conversation around self-regulating. It's understanding what we're going through and understanding that maybe we might need to do something about that. So Richard's challenge is around self-regulating, to slow down, to notice what it is that we're feeling, to find our baseline. What a great challenge for this time of year as well, after everything we've already been through this year, to try to slow down, to notice how we're feeling with all of the additional stresses and strains that we have on us. I'm going to be taking that challenge. Will you be joining me in that challenge? If you do, it could be life-changing for you. You may learn something about yourself that you have never noticed before. You can see my findings from this challenge in our Challenge Roundup video, which is a monthly summary covering all the challenges our experts shared. To get that video and all our latest health and wellness uploads, including interviews and reviews, subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified whenever we post. And if this channel can help your friends and family, please share it with them too. Also, if you want to get proactive with your health, Total Wellness Club are developing health quests over at questly.life. Join while we're developing the site and get access to health quests that immediately personalise your health. You'll get to identify which of 10 critical health categories need your attention. You'll be able to track your progress, and you'll be able to help us develop the platform. I'll put a link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.